In the 90s, Playmates Toys made the deepest line of Star Trek action figures in history. My name's Keith, and I'm a collector working towards owning all 284. I've been a Trek fan for almost 35 years, and most people are sick of me talking about it. But somehow I've convinced my old friend Mike to review them with me on Look at My Star Trek Toys! What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Look at My Star Trek Toys. Oh, Mike's doing another skit. Oh, let's tune in and see what's happening over on the bridge.
Keith, I've punched in the coordinates, and by the end of this episode, we should boldly have gone where no podcasters have gone before.
Except many of them. But as somebody with a family connection to the sound effects, I'm going to need to hear some of the boops and beeps that you're
beep, 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 boop, 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 beep, 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 boop, boop, beep, beep.
Wow. I mean,
in fact,
it's
channeling
uncanny.
my inner Schmerzy. Boop, beep, boop, 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 beep, boop, beep.
Okay. Wow. Uncanny.
Oh, that happened.
Uncanny. I think the skits are becoming the best part of this this show.
That or the sort of like mildly pornographic arm wiggling from last episode.
Accidentally. Yeah. No, that was these things happen, or when my cat destroys something live during the show. That also happens. So what are we talking about today, Mike?
It's a good question. Keith, last week we looked at the 6-inch shooty shoots. This week we're staying in the big scale, although it's not fan favorite. We're staying there because you got them. They're on your shelf, which means they've got to get beamed into my eyeballs. We're looking at the 6-inch Warp Factor 2 console series, whatever that might be.
Yes, indeed. All right, so this was the Warp Factor. This was the following year. This were in 1998. So Series 2 in the 6-inch scale. And these ones had a little different. Instead of having like weird little twitchy pew-pew things, they came with consoles or chairs or some other like prop that you got to use the figure with, which was actually much cooler, frankly, and much cooler than your standard choking hazards because you could actually do something with it.
But not quite a play set. So these were like standalone pieces?
Little standalone pieces to build out your figures with. So very cool. You want to know what's not cool, Mike?
What's not cool?
I have all the figures. I don't have all the consoles. So
no, how are you supposed to display it?
Well, consoleless, and I know it is a poor consolation to just have the figures, but I will console you with some more of Mike's skits.
Well, people, I will say that it does fit the holiday season here, Keith. No consumers can get their hands on the next-gen consoles, so damned if they're going to be able to get their hands on the old consoles. You know what I'm saying?
Yes, indeed. All right. Well, I think that's if that's not a cue to get going into the and start showing some toys. That's what we're here for. Everyone's clicking over this part anyway. So let's just hop right in to our first 6-inch Warp Factor 2 console figure, and that is figure 16256 Cardassian Soldier. There he is. Check that out, Mike. So initial impressions, just go.
I mean, he feels a little naked. I feel like he should have a console with him, with his...
I'm going to hear that all day.
With his bad self. So why don't we pop the box and see what I should be seeing?
Yes. So it came with a little Cardassian console there for him to be, hitting the beeps and boops. Mike, give us some beeps and boops just so I know what it sounds like.
Beep, beep, boop, beep, 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 beep.
Thank you. Excellent. So if you bought this one in the store and got it, you would get your little orange console deal, which is cool, as well as a Cardassian phaser, which kind of looks like a mushroom or a tiny little tiki bar tree. But so it's a cool, nice little addition there if you have the space to display it. So the figure itself, I think, is pretty interestingly molded. It's strange that his legs don't go straight, and there's a bit of a compromise there to get him to fit into the console by bending his knees a little bit. And he's also his body shape from the side is very odd. I don't know what's going on with his neck and why his head sits weirdly on top of his neck there. But they're trying to approximate the Cardassian ridges on the shoulder, but it does make his head seem way too small for the rest of his body. That said, the sort of paint job with like a little bit of patina to the metal there, I think is really cool. It makes it feel much more lived in and much more, because the figure on the display there isn't dirty. Because if you look at it against the figure in the packaging, you'll see that extra little detail along the edges, as if it's sort of burnished a little bit, is actually the painting on the figure. And actually, if you go to Toy Cam, we can take a look at that more specifically, which is a really cool effect there. So you
crotch
see,
shot.
Yeah, yes. Well, ignore the crotch. Focus on the metal paint job there, which I think looks
it's distressed.
really
That's
cool.
cool.
It looks distressed. Yeah. It's really cool. And so if you show the box, you can actually see that I just don't have a dirty figure, and it actually has that detail.
I don't know if our viewers, I'm sure you do, watched Tested, but Adam Savage, who makes a lot of costume pieces or practical pieces for cosplay or just for collector's items, he's big on what can separate a really cool piece from just a sort of, what gives it that extra authenticity is often the distressing, is the aging.
Right. And you see on in the back of his elbow here, it looks like his armor or whatever it is dented, but that's part of the mold.
It's cool.
It's very cool. I like that a great deal. But I did genuinely think that my figure was dirty when I first got it. I'm like, oh man, because you get them on eBay and sometimes they're not in great shape. I'm like, what happened to this one? It's not that. It's actually that, which is pretty cool. And so I figured, since we have him here, why don't we look at him opposite the 4.5-inch scale on this figure of Gul Dukat. And you can see that the Cardassian uniform armor thing that he's wearing there has a very similar design. You just get a lot more detail here with the 6-inch scale. You get a little bit less detail on the legs, although you do get some cool little ridging here on the side. I think it's a cool figure. The coloring on either of these don't quite match Cardassian to me. Go to the screenshot, and we can see that it's sort of neither this silver metal feel nor the sort of greenish gray that is on the 4.5-inch of Dukat, but they're excellent costumes. I mean, the level of detailing on that, as well as the makeup design, I think is just terrific. Which makes sense because they're were, at least to begin with, the main villains on Deep Space Nine. So you'd want to have those details. But the skin texture, or the skin color on this 6-inch figure looks a little greenish, where it's really more gray on screen. Nonetheless, I think it's a cool figure, especially if you have it with the console. Yeah, I don't know what's going on with the head. I guess they had to make some compromises so he could turn his head on this figure. But frankly, I would rather them just get the neck right and not turn the head and keep the articulation other places.
So are they just packing in the same console with each character?
No, it's a different console for each character, so don't worry. And actually, before we move on, we can talk articulation with this figure. And this is where it starts to break down a little bit, because there is no elbow, shoulder, or thigh articulation. His arms just go up and down. There is no other articulation there. So, as is typical, so many of these figures, they're great, and then you have questions about the articulation. They made so many different interesting choices about what to articulate and what not to. and maybe they're like they spent all of their budget distressing the paint and had to lose it in other places. Which I get it, life is compromise, Mike. Life is compromise. Let us not compromise your time any further and jump straight into our next figure, and that is figure 16257, the 6-inch Jem'Hadar. Look at that guy, Mike.
Yeah. Wow.
Take it away.
Looks like he's got a beard in the figure, but that's clearly just scaling. Oh, and he's got a cool ponytail in the back. What a cool. Whoa. Weird. I feel a little weird inside.
Well, Mike, we all have our type.
Like tracheotomy situation.
Well, that is a fascinating piece of Trek lore, because that is where the Jem'Hadar were genetically engineered to be soldiers. So they're not based on any species. They literally started from the beginning and gene sequenced these things. And in order to control them, because they made them super tough and powerful, they addicted them to an enzyme, basically a drug, that if they didn't get, they would die. So that's how they controlled them. And so this tube here is what distributes what they call Ketracel white, because I just know that off the top of my head because I'm a nerd. But that is what the tube is. A very important part of the character's lore. So I see what you're looking at there. Why does he come with a set of bongos?
I was going to say the same joke.
Good question. And the good news is go to Toy Cam, because guess what? I got them. These ones, I have the bongos. Here they are. They're just very, basic plastic tubes that originally came with a sticker that you would put on there to be your, touchscreen interface. It feels odd and not quite as tough.
Go ahead, have him play them, Keith. I'll do a little
Okay.
freestyle.
Oh, good. Oh, so fancy. All right, here we go. Wow, this is, you're welcome, Internet. What a program. That's really something that we're doing here. So we can talk articulation here, which is also really bizarre when you get specific into the articulation of this figure. No knee, no thigh. He's perpetually in that lunge. That's where he lives. He doesn't do anything like that. And his arms go up and down, and his right arm does not bend at the elbow, but his left arm does, which is bizarre. It's like they ran out of money one arm in and decided not to. And all right, so all of that is cool. But if you go back to, yes, that's exactly what I want you to go to. The coloring of this figure makes no sense to me at all.
Because he's green?
He's green on the figure, and it's, it's maybe not as green as it comes off on the screen there, but it's still definitely greenish tinged. And the actual ones are gray, if not a little bit of blue in the gray. So there is no green hue here anywhere. And in the uniform on the figure, that color is way too bright. The uniforms are gray and black. And why we get a green and the blue is like your grandmother's couch. It's like he hunted your grandma's couch and made an outfit out of it. I don't understand what's going on there. If you go to Toy Cam, yes, you can see on the picture there's like these weird little floral prints. None of that makes any sense for the Jem'Hadar, and it's bizarre. And I believe at this point, this was long after they'd been on screen, so it's not like this was an early prototype that they hadn't developed. So it is undeniably a mystery to me. Yeah, because this is 2 years after the original Jem'Hadar figure came out, and hop over to Toy Cam, because you can see the two of them together. and really get a sense of
yeah.
where they deviated here. Interestingly, the 4.5-inch also has that weird floral print. I don't understand where they were going with that, but they did anyway. But certainly the pigmentation of the skin is way closer to what we see on screen. Why is it green? Guys, why is it green? Jem'Hadar are not green, ever. It's really bizarre. So I have so many mixed feelings about this figure. Any other thoughts, Mike, before we move forward?
That epic silence there was me not having an answer for you, Keith.
Answer my questions, Mike. I mean, you're right there with the bongos. Why can't you answer my question? Now we're on Seinfeld. But yeah, so, console action Jem'Hadar, there he is. He's certainly interesting. But I wish they'd put as much effort into screen matching as they did to the bongos. Yeah. All right. Well, then let us just move forward to a much cooler figure, because there's nothing cooler. And I challenge anyone to find a cooler character than, of course, Captain Benjamin Sisko. Let's take a look at figure 16258. There he
just
is. Just chilling. Of course, here I do have the chair he came with, which I love. I wish they had a captain in their chair figure for all of them. Because here we have the iconic Sisko in his gray and black uniform, bald with his goatee, looking every bit the badass that he is.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So tell me your impressions here.
That's it. He looks badass. I mean, I'd almost wish they gave him the super leg cross like we see him here, but that's fine. He looks like he's just chilling. It's been a long day of captaining. He's got a night off. He's watching some Netflix, and he's just waiting for his Grubhub to get there, though it could take a few light years.
Yeah. Well, and there he is. This is, of course, the captain's chair from the Bridge of the Defiant, which we will see later in the series. Awesome. So there is the figure in the box. Again, it's the Warp Factor Series 2 box. And in order to ship it and put it in the box, they had to disassemble the chair. So I can show you how the chair is assembled if you go to Toy Cam. So here is the chair itself. And I think it's a great toy.
Very cool. Very cool.
It looks really good. It feels, relatively close to the screen, and it's very simple. They just popped it off. 2 pieces, put the pieces together, and you've got yourself your chair. Now, there is one thing about this figure that everyone who owns this figure knows, and that is remove the chair and what do you have? Mike, can you imagine what the issues might be with this figure?
That's just the same Sisko figure?
Nope. This is a completely new sculpt for Sisko.
He's a little haunchy?
This is the first and only 6-inch Sisko. But let's just have him stand up outside of the chair. And on the toy cam, and you can see, once we get the toy cam, yeah, he's kind of doing the monster mash. When I first got him, he didn't have the chair. I'm like, what? Is this figure broken? What is going on with this?
He could ride a horse? He's got a horse riding kind of
He could ride a horse. And yeah, so he's either playing piano or doing the monster mash.
I was gonna say he could play like keys in like an 80s synth band.
That's right. That we could do that. And so it looks a little ridiculous. It does stand up, to its credit, but in order to get him to sit properly on the chair, he has to have a very wide stance. And instead of building in an articulation that would allow him to spread his legs a little bit, it just lives like that. So he takes wide steps.
I gotta say, they gave us all the shooty shoots, the fun guns, and we were lukewarm about them. But heck, give me a chair to just sit up in. That's my fave so far.
Oh, it's so cool. And it's great on the turntable, too. I hadn't even thought about that. That looks great.
A double spin like at the teacups.
Yeah. Oh, God, I'm going to puke. So, anyway, a couple more things about the figure itself. We talk articulation. He has knee articulation. He does not have hip articulation. He can't turn in or turn out. And his Monster Mash arms will remain so because there are no articulations on the arms itself. So, like a lot of these, it's going to look good on the shelf, but you wouldn't want to necessarily do a wrestling game with them, as I know Mike is prone to do. Look, limitations aside, I love this figure. It looks
you
great
wouldn't
on
have this figure and have him stand up, but it'd be no point.
Well, if you have the cool ass chair, yeah, why would you?
That's what I'm saying.
You wouldn't need to. It also allows like the captain to remain seated, and you build on the bookshelf. You have him seated, and you have his team behind him.
I almost want to see somebody. I want to see a Sweeney Todd figure right behind him.
Oh yes. Well, that's I think that's a great transition for us to attend the tale of our next figure. Perhaps figure number 16260. Let's see Jadzia Dax. All right, so here we have Terry Farrell here as Jadzia Dax. Now, I will say with these Deep Space Nine figures that we've had figures of these characters before, obviously not in this scale, but also not in this uniform, which they wore starting in Season 5. Which if you go back to our Playmates wishlist videos, the Deep Space Nine cast in these uniforms in 4.5-inch scale is one of my absolute most wanted set of figures. Because I think, I love that cast, I love those uniforms, and so I'm really excited to get, even in the 6-inch scale, a Dax here in this uniform. And so you can see on this figure, we have all the stuff that we want. We have the full articulation. So we have the elbows and the shoulders and the thighs and the knees and the whole shebang here, which I'm very excited about. You can see in the packaging there, she came with a Defiant bridge console, which is very cool. Unfortunately, I do not have this console. Someday, some magical day, I will get myself this console because it's really cool. And if you combine this with Sisko's chair and maybe another console from the next figure, you've already started to assemble a little bit of a Defiant bridge, which is pretty cool. Mike, thoughts about this figure?
Well, Keith, I have a couple of thoughts I'd like to share.
Okay.
Now, we've talked before about the sort of like hypersexualization of some of the female figures.
Sure.
And usually you see that in sort of the chest area. What I'm seeing here, which I find kind of interesting, is like it's not part of the leg articulation. It looks as though there's an actual buttock sculpt.
A buttock sculpt, huh?
Yeah, like look right here on the movie photos. Like there's like an actual, like in the sculpt, they've given like a butt divot.
They do have a little bit of a... Well, let's go to Toy Cam and take a look at the butt divot, because that is the programming we're here for. Yeah.
Now hold up the Sisko right there. Do we see? Is there a butt sculpt there? Maybe it's equal opportunity butt sculpt. No.
It is a there's a hint of a cheek.
There's a cheek.
There's a hint of a cheek here on the Sisko.
Nikki, hold on. This is.
Well, folks, now that we have endured Mike's fascination with the butt creases of these figures, I think it is time to move on to the last of these figures. And this makes me a little sad, because while I wish that these figures were in 4.5-inch scale, we're getting a good chunk of the Deep Space Nine cast in these uniforms. And these figures in this scale are pretty interesting. But guess what? That's it. There are no more. This is the last of the Deep Space Nine cast, the last of the Deep Space Nine cast in this uniform, and the last of the figures in 6-inch scale. So this is, they called it a day after this. So we will have covered every single 6-inch figure in 4 episodes. So there's only one way to do a finale, and that, of course, is with our good friend and chief of engineering on Deep Space Nine, figure number 16266, Chief O'Brien. Let's take a look. Here he is in his Deep Space Nine uniform, sleeves rolled up as is traditional for the Chief O'Brien figures. And he has the later Deep Space Nine figure. He has full articulation. So much like the Dax figure, he has all of the joints operational as normal, and has a good sculpt with the shoulders. So it's pretty interesting there. His pips are not molded. However, they are accurate for a non-commissioned officer. So if you go to Toy Cam, and I'll show you that he does not have a traditional Starfleet pip because he is non-commissioned. So it is painted, but it is not the general dots that you normally see. So here we are with our Chief O'Brien. Any thoughts about the Chief? Well, very quickly here, and of course he comes with a engineering station from the Defiant that I don't have.
He looks good. The console looks cool. The collection of consoles would be really cool, them all standing together. Although, like you said, they're 6 inches, so I guess they would still have to stand apart, which does kind of suck. But we've trod that ground before. It's cool, great. We've mentioned the sculpting can be better on the 6 inches. His hair, very
hair
cool
looks
sculpture.
Great. Yeah. No, they did a really good job with that, and his hands look good too. Those are also always difficult to do. But I do have one question about this figure, and it relates to the scale, and that is the and I'll say this: Colomini, not the tallest fellow out there, but his figure is giant compared to the rest of the figures in the scale. It's very strange. And I noticed it while shooting the figures. You can see the top of his head is cropped off because he's the tallest of all of these figures, including much taller. If you go to Toy Cam, you'll see him against the fearsome Jem'Hadar fighter that he's like 6 inches taller than. Now, of course, he's bowed his legs a little bit, but why is O'Brien so giant? In fact, if we put him next to a First Contact Data, Colomini is like 3 inches taller than Brent Spiner.
I actually think that this O'Brien, though, is maybe the best facial sculpt. That's a very good sculpt.
It's a great facial sculpt, but there's also something. The scale is weird because Colomini is not tall, and yet I don't know why he's so giant. But if you actually go back to Toy Cam for a second, we have another one of the color mysteries. Now, remember, we showed the security Neelix figure that had this weird bright mustard yellow as opposed to the gold. And this figure also, if you see him here against Data, has crazy bright yellow mustard gold as opposed to the regular color. And some people commented about that. It is a mystery why they changed the color for engineering and security on these figures. Very strange.
But you know what else I notice that I think is kind of cool, because I'm one of these people as well. I am a person who wears my sleeves at 3/4, so halfway up my forearm. And they interestingly have that in this figure. You can see that he's got the sleeve slightly pulled up. Is that something he did in the show often, or that was just a design choice?
He did it very frequently in the show. And if you go back to Toy Cam, guess what? His 4.5-inch scale, same thing. That was because he's the chief engineer. He's diving around through Jeffrey's tubes. He's fixing stuff. He's the mechanic of the show. So he always had a little bit more of a roll up your sleeves and do the dirty work as a character there. So I like that. I think it's really interesting that they added that detail, and it feels character specific. So I really liked all of that. So why is he 4 inches taller than Colomini? Maybe Colomini slipped him $100 and be like, hey, let's make me a little taller for this figure, so he's sticks out on the bookshelf. But yeah, so that's it. Those are the 6-inch figures from Playmates. Mike, how would you sum up your feelings about the larger scale?
I think that it afforded us some really cool figures with a better sculpt. I understand the inconsistency issues as far as like collectors, so that makes a lot of sense. I would say that you would think that these are more expensive to produce, so maybe they would have made them a little more collector-y, not just, I feel like you said, the weapons ones were a little cheapy. These console ones were kind of cool, and they spent some money on the pieces. But I think if I had to pick out of all of them we've seen some cool ones, for some reason, just because it captures such character, they were able to capture such character. My favorite is right here.
Yeah. I think you may be right. I mean,
the Q is pretty cool too. The Q is pretty cool, but
you normally like the weird, crazy aliens, but when we watch Deep Space Nine together, I'm excited to watch you watch Sisko, because he's awesome. So that's going to be really fun. All right, well, that's it for the 6-inch figures, but don't worry, we will be back next week with more 4.5-inch figures. So I'm very excited to dive in. I haven't figured out what my theme is going to be this week, so could be anything. So Mike, if somebody would like to say hey, what about the what's and what's figures? How would they tell us?
Well, make sure you email Keith, because I have no control over this. And you can do so at lookatmystartrektoys@gmail.com, or you can comment down below. What'd you think of these guys? What'd you think of the consoles? Do you have the consoles? Send us your pics. We'd love to see them. Comment down below on the YouTube. You can also like and subscribe. It helps us out quite a bit. And also, you can check out the posts or tag us on Instagram at Star Trek Toys.
Yes, and we will be back next week. Maybe we'll do an episode on customs and displays. Who knows? Could be anything. I don't know. But thank you so much for watching. We will see you back next week on Look at My Star Trek Toys!